Hello and welcome today. Welcome to Daily Work Remote Strategies. I'm Senia Maymin, and we're going to do 3 tips today. So these are 3 questions to move people to action. And what I mean by that is to move you to action, to move me to action, to move people that you care about to action, like your coworkers or members of your family. And why am I bringing this up? Right now, we are at a time where we are at stay-at-home mentality. And there might be things that we might want to get done. Whatever it is, it could be something around the house. It could be a big project work-wise. And sometimes starting something new, especially when there's a lot going on in the world and you have additional pressures in staying at home and working. When that happens, we may not be as quick to start a new project. Or something that's back burner, we may not be as quick to start. Hello, everybody. By the way, I'm starting to see you jump in on this call. So hello and welcome. And today we're going to do 3 questions to move people into action. And the reason why we're doing this is because we're in these various phases where we might want to be starting a project. So what can you do? Today, I am very proud and delighted to bring my favorite page from the business book that I co-wrote with Margaret Greenberg. My favorite page in our book is page 17. It's very early in the book. So I will show you. Our book is Profit from the Positive by Margaret. There you go, by Margaret and myself. And on page 17, you'll see there's a special section. I'll show it up close as well. These are questions to get us going. So we know why we might want to get going if we have a project on the back burner that we'd like to get a little bit forward. So actually, my favorite thing about doing live is about hearing what are some projects that are important for you. So let's do that, and then we'll bring in these tools, these 3 questions that you can ask. So would you please share in the comments, what is a project you are trying to ramp up or get going or get started or jumpstart? What is a project that you would like to do that on? I'll start by sharing mine. So my project that I would like to move forward quite a bit is the project of working on my children's books. It is a hobby for me. It is a very back burner thing. A while ago, even 3 years ago when my daughter was younger, my mom made a really fun suggestion. I used to tell both my kids, my daughter and my son, bedtime stories. And she said, why don't you just record it on your audio, on your phone? Just record the story you're telling. And I did that so often that out of those, I have a few stories that I'd like to make into books, but it's such a back burner project. So that's the kind of project on which I could use these 3 questions. What is that kind of project for you? So think about it. If you're listening to this as a recording, what is it that you would like to move forward just a little bit? All right, let's get started. Question number 1 that you can ask yourself. And these, again, it's page 17 in our book, but you can also get them here. Questions that move people to action. First question, if you only had 5 minutes. So literally today, as you are at your desk today, if you plan a 5 minutes, if you only have 5 minutes, how can you move this project forward? So for me, I can go back to the illustrations that an illustrator created for the first book, and I can just give them a quick check-in, and maybe I might need to change one, but that's what I mean. It can be a 5-minute thing, not an in-depth, elaborate analysis of what I need to do. So what can you do if you only had 5 minutes? Question number 1. Question number 2, what if you could only move this forward by 1%? So if you were moving this forward by 1%, what would you do? Again, here's the project, big project. If you're just moving it forward by 1%, what would you do? And the third question, and actually my favorite, and probably one of my all-time favorite coaching questions ever, is what is the smallest step you can take for the biggest impact? You know your project. You know what it's about. You know what happens in it. So for you, what is the smallest step that you can take for the biggest impact? So there we have it. That's basically the 3 questions. And now I'd love to hear how it fits for you before we move into the Q&A section. So I'll just run through them really briefly. The first one is, if you only have 5 minutes, what can you do on this project? The second one is, for this project, how can I move it forward by just 1%, just incrementally? And the third step, what's the smallest action, the smallest step I can take for the biggest impact? And sometimes just asking yourself that question, what's the smallest step I can take for the biggest impact? That'll spark an idea in you that you may not have had yesterday while thinking about the project. Go forward, enjoy these 3 steps. Feel free to read about them in more depth here if you'd like to, but really it's just as simple as asking yourself, what's that incremental step? I'm going to tell you one other story about incremental steps, and then I want to open it up to your questions about anything business-wise. And again, we're here every day, Monday to Friday, except holidays, at 11 a.m. Pacific for a 20-minute just tools check-in. Here's a story. As you notice, all of these are about incremental progress. One is about what can you do in 5 minutes. One is about what can you do to move the project forward by 1%. And the last one, which is on the screen, is what's the smallest step. Here's a story. I don't have the exact names, but this is in the book on black box thinking. And it is such a cool story. It's a story about how the UK cycling team just wasn't doing so well. And then one coach came in, and his whole plan was, what can we change by 1%? What can we change by just an incremental small 1%? And things that you can change are, I think that my favorite part of this story was you can get people to come into, all of the cyclists, to come in and get a lesson from one of the best surgeons out there on how to wash their hands. And so cyclists come in and they're there for practice and they think, why is it that I need to wash my hands? What's so important about that? It turns out that if you even miss 1 day of practice because you were sick, it has a really, really big effect on your overall cycling. So these type of 1%, like washing your hands in order to not get sick for 1 day, in order to be just a little bit faster on race day, these are what make progress. So I want to invite you to do either, what can I do for 5 minutes? What can I do to move this project forward by 1%? Or what's the smallest step I can take for the biggest impact? That's the end of the formal part of our program today, and we look forward to speaking with you in the Q&A. Q&A time. I have something for you from yesterday, and I actually want to bring it out. I don't know if he's on this call today. Yesterday at the end of the call, one of you asked, what is something we can do in a Zoom meeting of about 10 to 15 people to get a pulse of the room, a sort of a soft skills pulse of the room? How is everyone doing? But to do it fast. And I gave an answer, which is you can ask people to go at the pace of a lit match, the lit match approach. Before a match were to touch your fingers, if it were lit, how fast can you explain what's something well that's happened for you in the past week? But this person, Andrew Soren, was all on the call yesterday, and he put in a couple of great comments that I just want to highlight. He said, if you're on a Zoom call, there are 2 additional things you could do. You, as the leader of the call, you can ask that question. So you can say, what's something really great that's happened over the past week? And then you can give people 1 or 2 instructions, depending on your team. So if you have a team of 10 to 15, you can say, type it into the Zoom chat, but don't hit submit yet. So type it in, and when everyone has it typed in and it's kind of giving a thumbs up or a head shake on the video call, then you can say, okay, everyone hit it. And then you see all of the answers at once. Everyone sees the answers. People can comment on the answers, that kind of thing. So thank you, Andrew. I think it's really great. We're in this technology. We're in this technology for the long haul now, which I love. Big, big fan of remote work, but also being able to make it more of a way where we can relate. So thank you, Andrew, for bringing that as an additional way of using this kind of technique, but in the world that we're in now. All right, questions, comments, ideas. One question I always ask you is, what is a takeaway you have from, again, I feel like it's so fun to put these on the screen. What is a takeaway you have from either what can you do in 5 minutes? How can you move the project forward by 1%? Or what's the smallest step you can take for the biggest impact? What is your takeaway? This is the most useful part of these kinds of live sessions for me, which is to see, what are you taking away? What can you do today on that project that you are thinking about, that you're either a little stuck on, or it's a new project, or it's been a back burner project? What can you do? What is your takeaway? So let me know what your takeaways are. We are looking forward to seeing what they are and what you're thinking. And my final comment to you is, please let us know what else you'd like to hear. So we're going to start having other coaches on these calls, and we'd love to know what topics you most want to explore. Is it presenting in a virtual environment? Is it moving forward in your career? Is it that work-life integration? What is it that's top of mind for you? So I'll keep this open for just a little bit to hear those 2 things. What is your takeaway? And what is something that you would want to hear more of? I'll just read off some of the takeaways that we're getting back, because some of you are seeing this just in video. What's the smallest step is somebody's takeaway. And actually, I know this person. You know what? I'm gonna do this cool thing. I'm gonna put this up here. So this is Brian Brannigan. He is an SVC, a Silicon Valley change coach, and he says my takeaway is what's the smallest step. But I will also add for you, he has taught me an even more fun question, which is what's the smallest half step that you can take? So thank you, Brian. That's really fun to see. Okay, so some of you are saying that the 5 minutes, I also like the 1%, because if you know the project is huge and you know that you only need to do a small amount on it, then you feel, okay, this is manageable. This is doable. Thank you for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again every day, Monday to Friday, we're here, and that's at 11 a.m. Pacific for up to 20 minutes. Thank you so much, everyone. See you next time.